Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the TheYouthPulse podcast. We are your hosts, Biddy Vyas.
And Lincoln Dye, and welcome to episode 4 of our podcast.
Have you ever tried to talk about your mental health to someone and they just said that you were being dramatic or overreacting?
Or have you ever purposefully just told someone that you're fine, even when you're not, because you just know that they're not going to understand what you're going through?
This is why we are talking about why mental health isn't being taken seriously still and what things need to change, especially for high school students.
Okay, so to begin us off today, we're going to talk about a little bit of a clarification of mental health and what it is. So it affects how we think, feel, and act. And the main thing about mental health is that it's not just a mood. We're going to be talking specifically about anxiety and depression, which isn't just a thing that you just feel. It's not just a mood that you're in, but it's a real condition that people have, and it affects people's daily lives, and it can affect not just their mental health, but their physical health as well.
And then some misconceptions about mental health is that some people will just think that you don't have mental health issues, like you don't look depressed enough or you don't actually look sad. How can you have depression or anxiety?
And I feel like that's really not fair because there's not just one specific definition for how any mental disorder looks. And it also can impact everyone differently. So just because you experience one major symptom doesn't mean that someone else with depression or anxiety is going to experience the same symptom.
And I feel like this is why many people use the term like masked in their emotions, because they'll be smiling and laughing, but they'll also be depressed and stuff, but people will never know. Or when they try to open up to someone, they won't be able to because they're like the smiling friend, which is why another term people use is like, you just need to be more positive, or there's other problems that people have. Why are you stressed out?
Masking symptoms is really common when it comes to mental health or any condition because society is built for people who do not struggle with mental health issues. And so, for someone who does struggle with mental health issues, they feel like they have to portray themselves in a different way for people to understand them, take them seriously, and even just so that way they can function from their day to day, whether it's at school, work, with friends.
Yeah, it really makes mental health seem like a choice and not like something that's actually needs to be taken care of or like could use help. But it makes them feel like they're being dramatic or like overreacting in themselves.
Definitely, like a major misconception is that it is a choice, which it's not. Just because someone can be happy, positive, smiling, bubbly, in a good mood when they're out with their friends or something, we really don't know what happens behind the scenes. And they might go home and have a complete breakdown, or they might just be really anxious the entire time and they're just hiding it with laughter or with jokes. And everyone has different ways of coping as well. And so it may get masked in that way as well.
And I feel like with high school students, especially with being stressed about school, many adults or even their friends will be like, why are you stressed out? It's not that serious, or we have more problems going on than you.
When you're younger and you're not an adult yet, a lot of your troubles are seen as like minor or not as big of a deal. And in reality, I feel like this affects high schoolers the most in the way that they feel about themselves, because if that's all they think growing up is that their problems aren't a big deal because they're not adults, then the fact that they're struggling can make them have a low self-esteem because they may be thinking to themselves, well, why am I struggling? Why am I not happy? Why am I not like everyone else? My age, when I'm not an adult, I don't have to deal with adult struggles.
Which is why most people don't like opening up to especially parents or their friends, because they feel like they're going to be judged or their problems aren't worthy enough to be needed help.
And another major thing is that people really assume that there has to be one like major trauma or burden for someone to struggle with mental health. People want to pinpoint a specific problem, and sometimes mental health can affect you without having some huge traumatic piece coming in the way of that. Like, you can deal with depression, you can deal with anxiety without having a financial burden, without having a breakup, without not having a lot of supportive friends around you. It can impact anyone, even people who have like a perfect life.
Yeah, and I feel like that ties into how people perceive you because most people will be like, you don't have any problems. What are you talking about? Like, nothing bad happened to you. How can you be sad?
Yeah, and it affects everyone. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure everyone has gone through a period where they have dealt with bad anxiety or bad depression.
Mm-hmm.
And that also doesn't mean that it lasts forever for everyone. And some people are able to go through periods where they're struggling with their mental health, whereas some people, it affects them throughout their whole life.
Yeah. I also think that something that can connect to this, like especially for people that don't struggle with mental health and why they perceive it as maybe you don't have it or have it, is because I think that especially in today's generation, it's very normalized for people to say that, oh my gosh, I'm so depressed, I'm having a panic attack right now, like I have a test tomorrow. Which obviously you can, but I think that the terms are too normalized. Like, I'm having so much anxiety right now, like I'm gonna die, I'm gonna like, it's like something that people see as more of just like an exclamation sentence rather than, oh, this is actually serious. And some people genuinely have panic attacks or go through midlife, or not midlife crisis, but have like brain shutdowns.
There's so many misconceptions when it comes to definitions and terms and the way that people communicate their feelings, because people will say, "Oh, I'm so anxious," and not in every single case, but I think in most cases, people are actually dealing with stress, not anxiety. And they can coexist,
Yeah.
and you can feel anxiety over anything. But I think a lot of times people are more stressed and they just label it as anxiety because it's almost like just a term that they want to use. Or people say that they're having a panic attack when they're really just stressed or anxious. Like, you can be very anxious. That doesn't mean that you're having a panic attack. And a panic attack is something entirely different and it's very scary and it affects you a lot physically. Whereas most people, there's also a difference between panicking and having a panic attack. You can be really worried, scared over something. That doesn't mean that you're having a panic attack. And I think a lot
Yeah.
of people don't know that.
I think that's why also a lot of people don't know how to perceive the real and fake version, sorry, because many people will think, like, if someone says, for example, I'm having a panic attack over this thing happening to her, and they're like, oh my god, me too.
Yeah.
When in reality, they might not even be, and it's just a common term to use when you're
Yeah.
super stressed out, or not even super, but just a little stressed out over it, and people normalize it to just use in conversations.
There's also depression too. Like you said, people say, "Oh, I'm so depressed right now," whenever they're just describing being sad or just not being in their full state, when depression is something entirely different than just being sad. You can actually be not sad necessarily and still be struggling with depression. Depression doesn't mean that you're just sad all of the time.
I think this really like confuses people who do have it and don't have it, because someone could have it and say it to someone else, but they'd be like, "Oh my god, me too." Like,
And it also is really harmful for communities of people that do struggle with mental health for people to be just generalizing mental health, because if someone actually does struggle with depression and then someone who does not struggle with depression says that they do, and in reality that person who said that they do is not struggling with it, it can make depression seem like something that it isn't. It can make it, again, go back to making it seem like it's a choice, or making it seem like it's not that bad, or it's easy to fix, and it's just something that you can just push to the side and get over it.
I also think that the way you grow up or the atmosphere you live in affects how you perceive or deal with people who have mental health, because I know that in certain families and cultures or just living spaces, mental health isn't seen as like important, or not important, but necessarily even considered. Like sometimes some families will just be like, everyone here is stressed. What are you talking about? Or like everyone has their own problems. And that makes them feel shut down in their own home or their living space, where when they talk to their friends, they're like, oh, I'm just stressed out right now. And makes them feel like they don't have actual problems.
I think it's also really hard when you are struggling and nobody else around you seems to understand how much you are struggling, or people just don't. If you're unfamiliar with a specific mental health struggle, then you're never really going to be able to understand what it's like to struggle with that. And I think that can be really hard for someone who is struggling, but it's not necessarily the other person's fault. It's just harder for the person with a mental health struggle to exist. And that's why a lot of people with depression have a hard time talking about it. And they may be less interactive with their friends, and they may become more distant and spend more time by themselves and stuff, is because it's easier to be by yourself and not have to explain what you're going through to someone who's not going to understand it anyways.
Yeah, I also think it makes people feel like they should or they need to invalidate their own feelings because they see it as a weakness or something that shouldn't even happen in the first place, because they, like you said, they feel like if they tell someone about it, it's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Or they feel like it's not going to be fixed. They're always going to feel this way. So it like forces them to just keep it in.
Mm-hmm. And I think with people not being able to have that help or support, it can get worse over time as well. And if you, especially with depression, I feel like when people aren't understanding you, when you're not having a support system, or when people are just invalidating your feelings and saying, oh, it's not that bad, everyone here is sad, everyone here is depressed, it really just gets worse, and it can lead to a major depressive episode. And obviously, with that comes even more mental health struggles.
Yeah, I think that especially in high school students, this, as we've been saying, is the most prevalent because they struggle with all of their stuff they're doing in the first place, with homework, classes, if they work, just going home and having family time and a social life. They can just at least feel burdened and exhausted, and people will just like demise them of feeling that way and make them feel like they shouldn't even be tired when they should be allowed to feel tired. Anyone can be tired, even if it's simple as just leaving your house.
Yeah. Another thing that I wanted to bring up, and it's kind of another misconception, is that a lot of people have been using the term high functioning to describe themselves. And really, what that means, or what they're trying to describe themselves as, is someone who is struggling with mental health but are still able to function regularly. Like they're able to go out in public, get good grades, hang out with friends, go to sports games, and have extracurriculars and all this different stuff. And that's what it means to be high functioning, is that they are able to portray themselves as a regular person while still struggling with depression or anxiety or something else. And I think when we're talking about this term specifically, I'm not going to sit here and say that people shouldn't use it to describe themselves, because it makes sense and it is definitely something that's true. People can still be very high functioning while struggling with depression. But I also think that it's actually worse. They're making it worse for themselves by masking their symptoms, and they're making themselves have to work harder to be normal or be like an average person. When you do struggle with mental health, it's better to be honest and give yourself rest time. If you know that you get burnt out really easily and that you easily fall into like depressive episodes, or if you get really bad anxiety, it's better to let yourself rest and sometimes it's okay to spend the night in and not have to go out and deal with other pressures. And it's okay to have like a self-care day.
I think it's really important to know what you need for yourself, and especially when you're suffering through depression or anxiety. As you said, some people have like misconceptions. They need to be a certain way, need to burn themselves out to feel a certain way, which is not true. And in many of cases, you just need to know how to comfort yourself and take care of yourself. And some people just think that there's a certain thing that they need to do to actually feel depressed or have anxiety, when if you have if you have something that triggers you, then you just need to figure out what that is or try to comfort yourself in a routine way to make your brain less active.
Another thing that's really common, and I think it's really portrayed in media as well, is the competition. And it's really internal for people struggling with mental health, but the competition to be someone who is struggling the most. And I think it comes down to people wanting to be seen and people wanting help but not knowing how to ask for it. Sometimes it can be really hard, especially when you're young, to ask for help. And like we talked about, people don't understand and people just think that it's not that big of a deal. And so I feel like me personally, just through personal observation, I've seen people trying to struggle the most to be seen and to be heard.
I think like with social media, like people will repost things on TikTok or certain like perceive themselves as not talking to other people on purpose or not doing things and trying to like show that, oh, I'm not okay, but I'm not going to tell you why. Because when other people do reach out to ask why, they don't want to explain it, which I understand that some people it's easier to not talk about, but it's that aspect of like showing that you need help but don't want any.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's a whole nother problem in itself is that, like, I'm not here to come at people who do that, obviously. I think it's more so sad that it's so ingrained in our society that we shouldn't ask for help. These people want help, but they don't know how to ask for it. And then when people offer help, they deny it because they're too scared to talk about their feelings or they don't know how to. And I think that's something that definitely needs to change, is that people need to be more open to talking about their feelings. And we need to be more accepting of struggling with mental health and be more open to talking about it in everyday discussions.
I think it's really important to not have set out rules or what you think is right and wrong in mental health, especially because I think that's the number one thing that prevents people from opening up or causes them to have this competitive factor, which is when the influence of the world makes it seem like, oh, you can't be stressed out, or oh, I need to be the most sad person. I think that if people opened up to them, even to themselves, just finding ways to find comfort in themselves or talking to someone about it, and people actually listening, not even giving advice, but just listening, I think that it would be way easier for someone struggling with mental health to find more acceptance.
Yeah. I think another major thing that needs to change is that people who don't understand mental health struggles, like I may never understand what someone with schizophrenia may feel like. I'm not going to be able to understand their struggles or their daily feelings necessarily like through their perspective, but it's really easy to just listen to someone and hear their feelings and how they deal with their emotions. You don't necessarily need the explanation behind that. You don't need to understand why certain things work a certain way. You just need to be there for people. It's all about respect. And you really have to think, like, it comes down to the golden rule of treat people the way you want to be treated. And if you were in their situation, you would want someone to listen to you and be there for you as well.
I think that, like I said, and you said, we think that giving advice or explaining to people why they should or shouldn't feel the way is one of the major problems, because sometimes when someone opens up, they're not looking for advice or not looking for, oh, maybe you should just do this instead. Mm-hmm. I think opening up your feelings is already a great step into taking out how you feel instead of bottling it up. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you guys so much for watching today's episode. If you liked this, make sure to comment down below on what you want to see next and like the video and subscribe.
Thank you.